You know, 1 year ago, almost to the day, Impossible Foods became the first company, the first food company ever featured at CES. You know, CES is the largest and most important tech show, and we decided to launch our Impossible Burger 2.0, an upgrade from our previous version, at CES. The reason we wanted to do that was to really explode the bogus mythology that somehow food is not technology. In fact, food is the most important technology on our planet. It literally sustains life, and we need it every couple of hours, okay? It's also the most destructive technology on the planet. The way we use animals to produce meat has moved the planet to the brink of environmental catastrophe, and we need to do something about that. So a year ago, we launched Impossible Burger 2.0. This is the best plant-based food out there, and it's available in about 17,000 restaurants, including Burger King, White Castle. We just launched it in retail late last year. It's a great product. This year, we wanted to do something even bigger. We're not just announcing an incremental improvement to an existing product. We're actually launching 2 new products here. We are announcing, number 1, Impossible Pork. This is the plant-based upgrade to world's most ubiquitous form of animal meat. We in America, we love our burgers, our steak, our chicken. Beef and chicken are the most ubiquitous forms of meat from animals. However, globally, by far, the number 1 form of meat comes from pigs. And they got a lot of problems. So we launched an upgrade of that, and you guys are trying it right now. You are the first people in the whole world to try Impossible Pork from the launch of Impossible Sausage. As you guys know, ground pork has many variants. The seasoned, preformed version of ground pork is called sausage. Super popular in Western Europe, all over the world, frankly. And we don't have samples of it today because it will debut later this month at 139 Burger King restaurants in the United States in the form of an Impossible Croissan'wich. Again, this is the plant-based upgrade to Burger King's most successful breakfast meal, and we encourage you all to try it. So we're going to talk a little bit more tonight about why we're doing this crazy thing called replacing the need for animals in the food chain. And the first person I want to bring up on stage is Pat Brown. Dr. Pat Brown. Dr. Pat Brown is a 25-year professor of biochemistry and currently a professor emeritus at Stanford University. He's the founder of the DNA microarray. He's a co-founder of the Public Library of Science, and he gave that all up in 2011 in order to start this company called Impossible Foods. Thanks for being here, Pat, and thanks for creating Impossible Pork and Impossible Sausage.
Thanks for inviting me up here, Rachel.
Okay, first question, why pork?
Why pork? Well, that's a question I think that could come up in America because, as you said, in the U.S., pork is sort of the number 3 most popular meat, but globally it is a clear number 1. In Europe, in Asia, in China, by far the dominant preferred meat is pork. And that's despite the fact that for 1/3 of the world's population, pork is actually forbidden by their religious or cultural beliefs. So can you imagine how popular it would be if you had a form of pork that wasn't forbidden in that way? Our mission is to completely replace animals in the global food system. We've been serious about that from day one. And of course, you're not going to achieve that mission without taking on pork. Although beef, from an environmental standpoint, on a per pound basis, is by far the worst offender, pork is not that much farther behind. It's a huge contributor to global environmental issues. Pigs convert the protein they consume into pig protein with less than 10% efficiency. So think about what that means in terms of the resources that go into producing pork using a pig. In our case, we convert the protein that goes into our product into protein that you can consume with 100% efficiency. So it's a big step up, and particularly international markets, which are now, as we grow, going to be a very important part of our future. You cannot have the emission that we have without creating delicious, nutritious plant-based pork. And I should also add, from a health and nutrition standpoint, the way we make pork today, and like I say, we happen to use pigs to make pork today, but from a consumer standpoint, pork is about the particular delicious flavor profile, nutritional value, and so forth. We have found a way to produce pork from plants, and it has 40% less calories, 60% less total fat, 40% less saturated fat, 0 cholesterol, higher iron, and unlike essentially all the pork, at least in the US and I'm sure in the world, no fecal pathogens. So all sorts of advantages from a health and nutrition standpoint.
Great. Okay. So some of you guys know me from previous careers. I used to be a journalist, so I'm going to ask the question that most of the journalists here want to ask. 2016 is the Impossible Burger. 2020 is Impossible Pork. What's next?
Okay, here it is. Squid. No, I'm kidding. I'm not ready to say what's next, but I'll just say that from day one, when we started working on our technology platform and doing the basic discovery research to understand the molecular mechanisms behind the flavor and texture of meat and fish and cheese and so forth, our goal has always been to have the know-how and the technical capability to make any of the products, any of the food products that today we make from animals. And we've been working on a whole slew of new products. I would say I don't want to announce what's going to be a next product, but I'll just say that there are some that are obvious from an environmental standpoint. I think one that doesn't get enough attention is the fish and seafood, which from a biodiversity standpoint is an utter catastrophe, and even from a greenhouse gas standpoint, a huge problem. So that's a high priority, but we're working on if it's a food that comes from animals today, you can be sure that people on our R&D team are working on a more delicious, healthier, and vastly more sustainable plant-based alternative.
Great. Okay. Before we open it up to the audience questions, I want to bring up 2 more people. Where's Traci Desjardins? Come on up, Traci. Okay, so Traci Desjardins is a classically trained French chef. She's also my friend. And she's got 5 restaurants in the San Francisco Bay Area. She's probably one of the most famous American chefs. She has or accelerated trends ranging from seasonal eating table, and now the move to plant-based foods. So my first question for Traci is really, you're probably the chef who has most experience now working with Impossible Foods pork product. She's been beta testing it for us for months. Tell us a little about it from a chef's perspective.
Well, thank you, Pat, and the whole team at Impossible for creating this incredible product. It is such a pleasure to work with. It really responds in the cooking applications exactly like ground pork. Juicy, you have a fatty mouthfeel. You guys, you've all tasted it tonight, so you kind of know what it's about. Working with it, it is practically identical to working with regular ground pork made from pigs, but fortunately it is made entirely out of plants, and so it is so many different applications. You can put it in dumplings and sausages, really any way that you use ground pork. It is, but it's also halal and kosher. Those applications apply, and really from an ethnic standpoint, you can do anything that you would do with ground pork. So all of the different Asian preparations, sausages, chorizo, tacos, you name it. It really responds well to all of those different applications, and it's just incredibly versatile, tasty, and super fun to work with.
So I got to ask this tough question too, because Traci actually has 5 restaurants that are considered the best on the West Coast, and she lives in San Francisco, which is sort of the epicenter of this precious foodie movement.
Our
right?
bubble.
Yeah, our bubble. Is plant-based meat some kind of coastal elite blip, or does it have legs?
No, it has tremendous legs. People all over the world, chefs that I know in Asia, chefs that I know in Europe, are clamoring to get their hands on this product. They're super excited about the fact that this exists, and they're curious and want to engage. Chefs are always looking for some new thing to work with, and the things that this sort of brings to you as a chef from a creative standpoint are endless. And so I think all the different ethnic applications, but also the fact that it is kosher and halal, it is amazing. So it's a new product that we can work with, that we can speak to people who really want to follow a plant-based diet, who, for environmental concerns, for health concerns, for any different reasons that they want plant-based products. So for chefs, it's like a dream come true, and you're going to get engagement from people all over the world.
Okay, the last person I want to bring up is Fernando Machado. Here he is. Come on, Fernando. Fernando is the... Why don't I move down here? Sorry. Fernando Machado is the Chief Marketing Officer at Burger King, which famously launched the Impossible Whopper last year. Fernando is also one of the best CMOs in business. Ad Age, Adweek, him as a top-tier guy, most creative person in corporate America, according to Adweek. And interesting fact is that Impossible Foods team first met Burger King's team back in May of 2018 at the National Restaurant Association conference. And almost from the start, Fernando was one of the biggest internal advocates at Burger King for Impossible and also for the plant-based food trend. So my first question is launch of the Impossible Whopper last year. How's it gone?
Thanks for having me first, and for the kind words. I wish I could take all the credit for being like the biggest advocate and all that. Reality is that we have lots of advocates for plant-based and for Impossible Foods in Burger King. I was one of them. We launched Impossible Whopper. We first did a market test with Impossible Whopper. It did really well. We decided to go for a national rollout. And since then, it has been great. It was one of the key drivers of our strong performance in Q3. Q4 I cannot talk about because we haven't published the results yet. But it has, I mean, the product performed really well. I think that one of the key challenges we had was like, how can we make sure that the taste profile of the product is great, that's juicy, craveable, that tastes like flame grilled, because that's what we're famous for. And it's a big deal to have the Impossible name together with the Whopper name, which is our main product. And I think that part of the success of I think that the key thing for the success of this product is exactly that. It does taste great. You know, it's a product that pleases not just like our current fans, but also attracts lots of people. And we decided to launch because we saw the trend in the marketplace. We saw people wanting a plant-based option, and we partnered with Impossible to make that happen. The product is great. It's selling well. If you haven't tried, I invite you guys to try.
So before I ask you one final question, and then we open it up to the gallery here, I just wanted to mention that Fernando actually flew overnight and is such an advocate for plant-based foods and Impossible Foods that he's actually flew here 4 days after the birth of Fernando 2.0, his second child. So I'd like to give you this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Impossible onesie. There you go.
He is that size right now. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
That will help with my boss at home, who allowed me to come in such a crazy time.
And we're doing this for Oliver.
Yes, thank you.
So the last question I have for Fernando before we open it up to the audience Q&A is, you guys were very much clear that you wanted to be first to market with the Impossible sausage in the form of the Impossible Croissan'wich, which is debuting later this month in 5 regions in the United States. And my question is, after that, what's next? How far can you push the plant-based trend?
I think that what we saw was that, as I mentioned on the first question, we saw that having a plant-based option, it's something that really attracts our current guests. But not only that, it really brings new people, especially the younger generations, to our restaurants. So having the Impossible Croissan'wich, I think, is really important for us. Breakfast is a very important day part in fast food, and we think that we can differentiate ourselves by having a plant-based option, right? I mean, if you're looking for plant-based options, you're not just looking for lunch or dinner, right? I mean, so now we have like a really key day part, which is breakfast. And as you said, like some really clear like health benefits in terms of nutritionals and all that. I think that the work will continue. The work will continue because, again, an answer that you provided, I think that plant-based is here to stay, and I think it's all about making people try and continue to improve the products because they will continue to evolve. I mean, we have like a version 2.0 of Impossible Whopper, of the Impossible Foods Burger. So they will continue to evolve. We'll continue to add day parts, add different products as additional options on plant-based, because we know that not only is something that our current consumer is looking for, but also it attracts new consumers for our franchise.
Take a seat. Who's got the right there? Just yell.
Okay, Rita Kurtz from Harvard University. I wanted to know, are you going to attempt bacon?
Bacon, the bacon question. When bacon, Pat Brown?
Yeah, that's a great question. Of course we are. And in fact, we've already played around with it. We're not going to release a bacon product until we feel like anyone who is the most hardcore bacon worshiper thinks it's awesomely delicious. But we're definitely on track. And I was just telling Fernando, it's going to be an epic moment when we serve the first kosher bacon cheeseburger. And I think that'll probably be like the most epic moment in the plant-based food movement.
Yeah, that'll break the internet. Okay, yeah, right there.
Hi, I'm Joan Salzman from CNET. I'm curious, I'm getting into sausage and pork.
Does this work yet?
Hi, I'm Joan Salzman from CNET. I'm curious about the decision to go after kosher certifications for sausage and pork, given that those are meat foods that in halal and in kosher tradition, the customer there has never eaten it feasibly and therefore doesn't have a gravitational pull to that sort of food. Why go after kosher and halal if that market doesn't seem to have a built-in customer?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it wasn't so much that we thought there was a built-in customer, although, frankly, I think that to a large extent, probably the reason that 2.5 billion people in the world avoid pork out of religious beliefs isn't that they have a distaste for it or they aren't interested in having a banh mi sandwich or a, pork dumpling. It's just that it's something that, for ethical and religious reasons, they don't do. I think we're just giving them the opportunity. We're just making sure that they understand that there are no religious problems with their eating this product. If they choose to eat it, great. If they don't choose to eat it, no harm done. I think it's opening up a new set of possibilities for those 2.5 billion people, though.
Is this on? Yeah. Yeah, if you can hear me. If not, it's okay. If not, it's okay.
It's not a home.
Yeah? All right, there we go. Cool. Awesome. Just as a question, from an inspirational standpoint, what made you want to go ahead and just shift and go uphill and just kind of fight this battle for humanity?
I know you have your microphone on, but I can't hear.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, there we go. I was going to say, so what was the inspiration for you to really just push uphill and create this, huge change for humanity? I feel like it's such a, interesting shift, and it's obviously that you're the only person who's really pushing for this. So what was like that breaking moment for you where you were just like, this is what I need to do, and this was what makes sense?
Not just for pork, you mean, but just in general?
Just in general, yeah.
Oh, actually, it was a no-brainer, really, because as soon as I became aware of the catastrophic environmental impact of the use of animals as a food technology, which is overwhelmingly, by a vast margin, the most destructive technology on Earth. And this is, a technology conference, this is important to know. The most destructive technology on Earth is the use of animals in the food system. It is responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than the entire transportation industry, every car, bus, truck, train, plane, rocket ship, boat combined. It is by far the biggest user of fresh water, by far the biggest polluter of fresh water, and probably most destructively of all, it occupies 45% of the entire land surface of Earth is actively being used to raise animals for food. Compare that to every city in the world with a population of more than 100,000 can fit in 0.5% of Earth's land area. For all practical purposes, the land footprint of humanity is animal agriculture. And it's not just from a greenhouse gas standpoint, the opportunity cost of that land footprint is humongous. If we could snap our fingers and make that industry go away, which I would do in a heartbeat if I could, immediately atmospheric greenhouse gas would start going down. Atmospheric CO2 levels would start going down. Now, I was just at the climate conference in Madrid a month ago or so. It was kind of depressing. I mean, basically, you have all these people, diplomats from around the world trying to come up with an agreement to avert catastrophic climate change. And basically, the best they could do was accept the fact that we're just going to allow an increase in atmospheric greenhouse gases, worse and worse and worse catastrophe, and having agreed to that, they're not even doing it. And so what it comes down to is it requires individual, forget about governments, they're not going to do anything, and international groups, forget about it. It requires individuals to step up and think about how can we innovate to prevent climate catastrophe. And an even bigger issue with that, and like I say, if we can kick that industry off the land, you can immediately start turning back the clock on climate change, because the recovery of plant biomass on the land that we're using now to raise animals for food will fix carbon by photosynthesis. Just recovery of those ecosystems will fix carbon by photosynthesis faster than we're emitting it right now this year. And on top of that, maybe even worse than the climate impact, is the biodiversity impact. So we are in the advanced stages of a catastrophic collapse of global biodiversity. The total number of wild animals living on Earth today is considerably less than half what it was 40 years ago. And that's mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. And if you look at the reports on biodiversity, overwhelmingly, for all practical purposes, might as well be the only cause, is the use of animals in the food system. Overfishing, and on land, it's habitat destruction and degradation to produce feed crops and to graze animals for food, okay? That's a catastrophic collapse. I mean, that can you imagine, like, we have less than half as many wild animals living on Earth today across the entire tree of life than just 40 years ago, just because of our use of this ridiculous technology in food production.